right. Welcome back to Splice. We all survived Mardi Gras. Round of applause for that. Little snaps for surviving Mardi Gras. You know, my liver might not have survived, but I got through it okay. We have an excellent night of poetry for you tonight. We have one person coming from Berlin. Another person, coming from, come on in. There's seats up there. Standing room only, love to see it. Another person coming from Vancouver. It's going to be a kick-ass night. Got some freaky shit. And introduce some of that freaky poetry, Henri Goldkamp.
Thank you all so much for being here. Happy post-Mardi Gras. In the poetic work of Ina Krasnoper, the page becomes a garage, a dance studio, a white box, acid-free theater. The written word is a tool to tinker with, a joint to stretch or knuckle to crack, the rehearsal of an opening act that begets more openings. Or, as the opening poem of her collection Sealed might metaphorize, the page is a kind of waiting room where we, quote, anticipate more hurrying to do. Hers is one of suspension, an engine that sputters again and again without quite turning over. And it is this act of revving repetition, to turn the key, hit the gas, and miss, hit another word with another facet, the angle grinder sparking against its commonality, that makes us do a double take with our ear, a hard listen with the eye. The polarities of anaphora and epistrophe ground Krasnoper's lines, but it is the current zipping through, or is it like the rat we often see here scurrying across the wire to get from point A to point B in the name of survival? In another poem, the speaker states, quote, I am not a crocodile, cracker, or anything except Polly. Thus, the parrot paradox. To repeat can generate a power, as in chance, or it can begin to thin the liquidity of construct, a tug-of-war with a 2x4. Krasnoper's work reminds one of the tensile toy of language, like a silly putty or a plastic explosive. Reminiscent of the language poet's proclivity towards toying letteristic association, we have here tonight a poet who stretches themselves translinguistically across several languages, yet she emphasizes the conglomerate, reminds us, quote, it is one language, no one piece is to be taken from it. When juggling so many tongues, German, Russian, English, we detect the slick spit of their materials when activated in the body. Tangible and tangential viscera that are receptors of knowing beyond the cerebellum, that are in cahoots with the mute spaces between the impossibility of translation, or even within a monolanguage. As one of my favorite poems opens, did you touch my English? Visuality, kinesis, sonicality. Within these considerations, prefixes unmoor themselves a la N.H. Pritchard. Slant rhyme turns slope a la Dickinson. True rhymes question capital T truth a la Mayakovsky in the original Russian. The art of the line becomes equatorial, a baseline of usual temperatures disrupted into erratic freezing and boiling points that make one sweat or shiver, depending. Quote, an inky dropping, splat, splat, a poem. Ultimately, Krasnoper is a poet, quote, all for distance, named elsewhere as a slice of uncertainty, as when the virtuoso dancer's feet never seem to touch the floor. Check your poetry passports in the old world and mind the new gap. Here to help us all question the clearance is Ina Krasnoper.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Sean, Rodrigo. Thank you for coming. How long is the letter I? How long is the letter I? How long is the sound Q? How deep is the sound? How deep is the sea? Have you seen the letter I? Did it show up? Did it show down? How long is the downtime of a downing letter I? Of a drowning letter, of a drawn letter, of a gesture of letter to the left, of a left letter to stay, unattended, unended, in a long sounding, ungestured letter, in a let be letter, in a let it letter, in a letter trying to tail lettre, in pursuing the letter, in catching the letter at its end, having consulted with the tailor. Im, voraus, impact, implication. I am implied in this implication, in this намерение на мера, пресечение, сич, приближение, прибавление, to come, to coming, to welcoming. Too much of a well, one can hear in a well, its borders are welcoming the sound. Sound bounces back, backlash, backstage, backstagniven, to stash in a stalk, squish oneself in a stalk, stack onto accumulate, акупунктура, аккумулятор, зарядка, за, рядом, за, here, once. Keep apples, one doctor a day. One day of a doctor, one day of a dichter. Keep dapples away. A dimple per apple, one dumpling, one darling of an apple, one day of an APC of an apple, one napkin a day, one day. I'd say once upon a day, an apple grew forward. An apple stood under the day. Under the rain stood an apple and licked. A day licked its apple. Apricot, was it at the end of the day? Today I'd call you a day, and day, with a narrower day. How narrows the day? Is it a day? I'd call it a day if it's not an apple. If it isn't enough, call it something else. Elsewhere you would call it ein Apfel. Apfel, roll, rolling day after day. After today, abgespritzt. Springen, spritz. Что ты говоришь? Чтобы you wouldn't say, it stays with a day. Наедине с day, сдать day в утиль. Утекает украдкой, удачный day, удачи. A day on the river, rivering, pivoting, reverting, a day to today. Respecting some day, it's privacy. Priceless day, prayer of a day, отдать day, отдаленный day, откроенный, открытый. Today we discover a day. We take a day cover and lift it. It lifted a little, it was lit, it was left with a cover. A cover is next by Es ist nebenan, es ist. A cover is getting eaten by whom? It gets by something is left, the other something is not. It is not left in alone. It is next by alone. It is left alone in one part and in another in B, lot, in B, loved, in B, ended, in B, closed, in a closet of a day, es ist beschlossen. Tell me why, tell me X, tell me Z, tell me здесь, tell X from Y, tell me from your heart, tell it to my, oh my, tell my sister word for word, tell me what, nada, nada, yellow, your bedtime starts soon. Tell me about a bed, обедать. Tell my dad, 30 лет плюс подросточный возраст. Tell me about growth, tell an oath, tell me oatmeal, did you out-oat me? Tell me, mia, mia, mir, mover. Say to stop, say to go gold me, say to turn gray today. To tell my grayish, hairish, mich, tell me, mich, tell me to use three bukvy, tell me to unuse words, tell world from word, reword me with some telling, retell up to a welling, tell me repercussion. Cushion, the lie. You said blah, and it's poetry. You said blah, and it's poetry. You said nothing, and that ought to be poetry. You said you left poetry out and stayed. You stated you are outstaying poetry, you stayed on the margins. You said vagina and it was gigantic. You brought up crocodile Vienna and his genetics. You said poetics and it's singular. You said black and Ямало-Ненец Autonomous Okrug. You moved out and settled. You led your poetry elsewhere. You have pronounced your patronymic. It wants to translate as wolf. You were told you are getting somewhere. You were told you are getting some what? You've taken water into your mouth. You are still mixing up German pronouns. You have named what your poetry means. You have the means to outgame your poetry. Your poetry weighs a lot. You load your poetry into traveling storages. Your stories outrageous. It took me time. It took me some time. It took me some other time. It took me some time either way. It took me to the other side. It took me across. It took me one way or another. It took me by task. It took me at dawn. It took me taking a while I was slow on the uptake. It took me far, it took me for a toucan, it took me all the way, it took me at breakneck speed, it took me dodging, it took me and my doggy. It took us to many cats, all of them were at stake. It was taken artfully. I was taken by several stores. I was taken to a store which was multi-storied. I had to step on the stair. I couldn't give up being taken. I was heavily influenced by that scene. I had many takes on it. Some were mistaken. They had to be taken off the table. What has it to do with me? What has it done to me? What has it? Me. No me has it done to me, no done has it to consider to me, no cider have I been drinking recently, no cent have my trousseau to distribute, no tribute to what it has done to me. No done in as far as one could see, no attribution ending the word, no word to attribute to, no biting as far as one could reach, no reaching across. The word is a sounding in multitude. It sounds as far as one could hear. Roar is a word. It is a word to be roared, to be confirmed, a firm word. In the family of words, roar is quite raw. At the same time, one needs to roar affirmably while being reared. The road leads to a sound that has potential. A sound is potentially roar. It is cooked in sounding, in ending multiply. Additionally, what a story. Orally, the story is to be told. In forking directions, we multiply the story, and then it writes. It covers letters with sound and back uncovers the sound in letters. In letters that are written, rights of sense to sense, right to detect. We spring upon rights, our rights of spring. Is this right? Why does right sound like luch to me? I would not know. Let's let it be luch. Right could be luch and no lucher than no luch. If it isn't a luch, it would sound to me like one. One of the beams would be right, would be luch, and another one right. Let me be right about this. At least in one thing, I could be right. I could sound like this in search of the right word for what I'm saying. For my Slavic colleagues. О времени хлопушка, о времени игрушка, о времени нет трушка, о времени ни капли чу. Протерлось время, дыры плещут, глухари щебещут, щуки выплескали свои оскалы, а скалы оплескались, оплеск взыскались раз, через два, да через строчку, через мочку уха уставились глаза. А глаз ко времени оплеска, оплеуха, опрыскиватель напрямую в дальний угол. О головы пустое жало, сбежало молоко прокисло, кисло сладостью за висло. О висло времени, о весло оса полыни полного ведра. образ, образ. Оба опачки листочки. Это было когда бы было. Опрашиваю я тебя с вопроса первый на предпоследний. Угадать предатель. Передари предмет мотанья. Да, как же, как уже скукожившись. Шеренга, шигада, добуду буквицу сюда. Да, прыгнуть до привычного станца. Normalerweise muss man нормальные слова юзать. Usually I should have a clue what words to use. They are cueing us to be klug. Встают в круг. Auf eine Wiese wissend. Someone is at ease with words when they release them orderly. Orderly. Лишка eng. Unleash. Маленько. Usually words come in clusters. They are sculpted into a snowman who is also a gnomon. Sophia says she is fond of anomalies. A form of a norm is enormous, then a mouse runs by. Usually I get lemons or the limits of words prone to imitation. Normally I have to correct. Usually I need to come up with more ordinary speech. Speech in Russian is almost bitter without go. It leaks out unbidden until someone puts up a wall. Someone. Bitte. I meet you at our house. I'm your housemate. Both of us pay house meter. Our house holds. Wir sind mittendrin, admitting me and thee. You aren't my twin. One of us didn't watch Twin Peaks. It's a win-win at a bike's length. You pretend to have a tooth for it. It stands for many things. Then it falls. I haven't been to Sioux Falls. Untying words, time lies ahead of me. I applied for a residency in Auckland. The people there are nice. They nest. They nest me for a while after I tested them through emails. I saw San Leandro Times on the ground. There was no mailman nearby. A man asked if I liked the building of their church. New Orleans man said they keep adjusting the trucks sign. I get tired of checking my grammar. I'm worse at checking on my grandma. People ask if I miss the country. Only that house. In the former experimental household, nowadays Поселок Чернолес. When will I go to Schwarzwald? Later than Schwarzkopfstraße. Something is always missing. An extra letter in the wrong place. To place this right, I'd need to go left. Two more. You put your words in the past tense, as if you have gone past this. You put your words in a past sense. You say their time has passed, yet these were my words. I agreed to them in the past. You say that sense is tense. It lies around in a tent. It is attended to. They once made sense, attended to the essence of things. That train has left you tender. You say eine Mund-Nasen-Bedeckung. Наденьте рот, нос, покров. Wear mouth and nose cover. Would you recover? Let go of go. Речь, let loose your letters. What's past is past. What's past is present. What's present is to come. I say, I came. Is it raw? Es war. There was a war on. I heard myself speaking. I heard myself. I heard myself speaking. I heard it myself. I heard it, my herself, my himself, my part of my him herself spoke. I spoke of myself with a shady self. Self-seal wasn't possible, no salvation, fear through God. It enacted a future fire. I got myself some fatigue in hearing, heard no more, heard partially, no part after no part. It has parted me and left with some parts. I was departed among parts, they would not gather, they would build a wooden wood with no forest there. I would not hear myself. I could not have heard. I could have heard it, the hearing alone. Who would have heard? Repeat after me. Who would have passed by the outpost? Who would have posted a brief out there after hearing something left out alone? Thank you.
All right, everybody. So, back in the early 90s, pre-internet, pre-social media, poetry journals and books acted as the sole literary roadmaps available to young poets, along with word of mouth. With great effort, a dogged drive, but most of all, a maximum sense of curiosity, one could find clusters of writers with shared affinities. If you wanted to meet someone you didn't know, you'd have to contact the publisher, usually by postcard, and see if they would forward you the address of someone you wanted to share ideas with, also by mail. There was no way to front load your lifestyle, your looks, your fetishes, let alone what you were eating, drinking, or goofing off with on any given day. There was nothing to go on, be validated for, or summarily dismissed, but your actual writing. A single issue of a magazine could act as an organizing principle for years, and quite often we had no idea what certain poets looked like or sounded like for years at a time. In 1994, Rob Fitterman organized a conference in New York City inviting poets from all over the country who were doing innovative experimental poetry. This is where I first met Jeff and so many others that would go on to define that generation. Actually, To be exact, January 1st, 1994 is when the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, went into effect for the United States, Canada, and Mexico. It's also the same day when the Zapatista uprising took place in Chiapas, Mexico. That neoliberal-driven planned economy was on schedule to upend labor's power in all three countries, uproot millions of small farmers, shape entire regions, their culture, their sense of projection outwards, even their innermost dreams and impulses. Unbeknownst to each other, Jeff and I had already been exploring what the downstream effects of that global tectonic social change might bring to poetics. Anyway, it's at that gathering where we heard each other read for the first time, and I'll never forget it. When Jeff got off stage, I had read earlier, he said to me, the first words out of his mouth, "I've been writing this for you all along." I felt the same way. And though physical distances have kept us away from each other for decades, we always managed to make things happen in New York, San Francisco, Vancouver, and now in New Orleans. My enthusiasm for his thinking and writing feels as fresh today as it did back in the day. Jeff Derksen is a poet for whom the line is not just a unit of rhythm, but a unit of analysis. His poetics is a sustained engagement with the world, not as it is, but as it is dialectically evolving. His writing is a world of cities, of economies, of social forces, national, international, that shape our daily lives. Everything has material significance in his poetry. Pop songs, fashion, historical events of long ago, architecture. And although there's a strong social theory substrate to it all, the way he expresses things isn't all double and triple slanting. His experimentalism isn't just froofing up text through wild typography, or just merely varying off the latest fashionable effectual stances, attitudinal grandstanding. His work is rather a structured invitation to have people think, compare, and contrast what Marxist critic Frederick Jameson called cognitive mapping. It's about how to patch together a highly fragmented, unrepresentable totality of the global economic and social system. Even today, 2026, people think of avant-garde poetry or what have you as embracing the fragment. Well, as far back as the early 2000s, even in cramped, loud literary parties in the East Village, the Mission District in San Francisco, or Philadelphia's South Side, you could hear some of us chirp off. The fragment sucks, man. Come on. Derksen's poetics is also aware that it is actively co-authoring pedagogical political cultures, ones that restore a sense of agency, making class conscious possible again on a global scale. And he often worked through allegory at a personal, local, and seemingly through simple stories that reveal deeper mapped narratives about economics, history, or social structures. His praxis is not about creating a literal, accurate map of the world like the neo-objectivists among us, nor is it about slop, surrealist mandalas of the individual self that are found on Instagram. Rather, it's an art of exchange with us, like here, tonight, putting things on the table. How much can we piece together, and in what way? There's a generous, wry wit, always a play in Jeff's books, a humor that lands with the force of what he once called socialist one-liners. It's a poetry that invites you in to do the work of meaning making, to see the connections between, say, a Vancouver or Viennese condo development and a transnational corporation's doublespeak on social identities, between urban bird habitation patterns or trees and industrial sectors, aka people. The inner lives and the outer structures we inhabit are in constant dialogue, and even though his most elegantly structured talks, even through his most elegantly structured talks, the angry and resolute working class mod is burning just under the surface. As a founding member of the legendary Kootenai School of Writing, KSW, Jeff Derksen has been at the forefront of a poetry that is radically collective, politically aware. The KSW is a Vancouver-based writers collective that grew out of the creative writing program at David Thompson University Center in Nelson, British Columbia. When the university was closed by the provincial government in May 1984 due to budget cuts, a collective of former instructors and students formed the Kootenai School of Writing to continue its work. A dusty room, an old couch, some rickety chairs, a nice chest of beers, copies of alternative edgy print journals, actually much like Tilted House here in New Orleans, strewn all over. Lisa Robertson, much admired in these parts, did not, pregnant pause, suddenly appear from out of a giant clamshell surrounded by silkily clad adulators against a background of azure washed with pink heavenly light. No, she could be found every week in a corner of that impromptu little schoolhouse engrossed in heated conversations with Jeff, or Clint Burnham, or Deanna Ferguson, or Nancy Shaw, or any number of international guests the KSW hosted in those small, cheap, nearly abandoned urban spaces. The KSW is legendary among poets inclined towards fiercely educating themselves outside of institutions, and yet Jeff did go on to build programs within several institutions, carefully building out poetic projects imbued with the same uncompromising spirit as the KSW. That is, an intellectual rigor spliced, pun intended, totally, with gritty realism. Jeff Derksen is professor in the Department of English and was the Dean and Associate Provost of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies at Simon Fraser University. He holds a PhD from the University of Calgary in Literary and Cultural Studies. His doctoral work was on Canadian national literature and poetics and pressures of the state and globalization. His critical volume, Annihilated Time, Poetry and Other Politics, focuses on the relationship of Canadian poetry and its cultural transformations in relation to globalization and neoliberalism. His collection of critical essays, After Euphoria, reflects on 21st century artistic production in relation to urbanism and cultural exchange. Since 1984, he has published on poetry and art in journals and magazines in North America and Europe, most recently the University of Toronto Quarterly with the Canadian Literature and Temporality of Dying Colonialism. His poetry books include Future Works, The Vestiges, Transnational Muscle Cars, Dwell, and Downtime, as well as numerous chapbooks. He currently serves on the editorial board of literary magazines and publishers in Canada and Europe. Previously, he was the editor of the literary journals Writing Magazine and Line, and was a founding member of the Art Speak Gallery. Derksen is a Fulbright Fellow and was a postdoctoral research fellow at the Center for Place, Culture, and Politics at the Graduate Center at CUNY in New York. Please give a warm welcome to Jeff Derksen.
More than human labor. Obsolete Cold War Navy dolphins write algorithms that design an app to do the laundry for overemployed people. Dung beetles, decommissioned from nature documentaries, collectively lug overweight luggage into the cargo bays of discount European airlines. The bats who took a short-term contract to patrol a new condo construction site at night to thwart theft from the midnight lumberyard are injured when the beam they hang onto to take their break collapses. Metallica replaces their drummer with an octopus from Vigo, Spain, who learned heavy metal on the sides of the ships they once riveted on the waterfront. Acrobatic barn swallows dust the penthouses of oligarchs, poetically catching each mote in the air. Turf wars break out between European and Chinese praying mantids. The deadly squabbles end through negotiations by unemployed European parliamentarians who lost their jobs when elected political positions were opened to all species. Whales towed tankers through the rushing tidal waters into Vancouver's harbor, having joined the Canadian Merchant Service Guild. Uniformed skunks working in groups keep protesters away from the pipeline, raising their tails and spraying directly into the eyes of civil citizens in accord with their training ordinances. The goats who do the landscaping for the city have gone on strike, asking for fewer working hours and more variety in their food. The city responded by busing in a gang of llamas from a local prison. Are the krill done with the dishes yet? Have those little non-union fish completed the pedicure? Do rufous hummingbirds sleep on the job? Has the sloth put the baby to sleep? Have the trout completed their micro-credentials? Have the stellar jays negotiated a new contract yet? Banana slugs wearily lead tourists through the park's marshland area, having texted the red-winged blackbirds when they should flash up, display their underwings, and sing. Raccoon sous chef prepare another locally sourced meal at restaurants bearing names such as Forage, Terrain, West, Sea, Park. Organized pollens clog voting machines in Iowa. The woodpeckers who carve seamless single-tree replicas of Danish modern furniture from live teak planted in the formerly deforested Amazon are challenged in court by the copyright holders of Arne Jacobsen's iconic ant chair. Weaver birds silently stitch wounds in the emergency wards of privatized hospitals. They fly home to elaborate nests, catching some sleep between shifts. During their northward migrations, gray whales hold workshops up and down the coast on horizontalism and radical democracy. Software writing squirrels in Latvia keep one step ahead of the cyber police, working in intensive bursts, stepping aside as a comrade takes their spot in the code chain. Kermode bears plot anarchy high in the mountains, but find urban warfare difficult. Bluefin tuna running in schools at high speed overtake luxury yachts, force the owners into rescue dinghies, and redistribute the loot through complex supply chains of defunct sushi markets. A tourist buys a bracelet from a starfish on the beach in Rovinj, Croatia. The starfish dreams of the olden days of Yugoslavia, of social wealth. Bavarian boars, pushed into cities by new land enclosures, work with tent villages and urban parks, fending off city crews given orders to tear down the camps. Students organize protests in solidarity with the bears. Slovakian bears, trained in early electronic keyboards and synthesizers, begin a successful electronic music record label in Vienna. Ants closed down the North American banking system with a highly coordinated strike on ATMs. On New Year's Eve, individual bills are carried out of the machines, moved along predetermined routes, and stashed in complex underground networks. 2 ants are captured, but refuse to give up their comrades. In solidarity, they eat each other. Diplomatic pandas negotiate new trade restrictions on the production of electric cars. 12 sheep from Salt Spring Island establish a craft brewery in East Vancouver. A group of Norwegian grey rats chew through the gentrifier's distillery hoses and reclaim the neighborhood. Mice and guinea pigs care for the elderly in Maple Ridge. Blue algae shut down the tourist industry in Washington State and set up an unseen alternative society. Robins grade the multiple choice final exams of the first-year university students after students complained that the mallard ducks who did it last year, brought in on contract, were too erratic and had nervously shit on the text booklets. A 40-year-old halibut wins a seat for the Green Party in Tofino, BC. A black squirrel wins the 24 Hours of Le Mans race, but is tragically killed crossing the traffic after victory. Vietnamese pot-bellied pigs from San Francisco again win the International Street Food Epicurean Award for their Asian fusion vegetarian cuisine. Vast Multitudes of freshwater mussels decolonize rivers by covering obsolete hydroelectric dams. Razor clams lie undetected under the sand of Malibu, burrowing closer to beach matches. Thanks for people setting up the reading, for Rodrigo, for Sean, for Henry, and thanks Rodrigo for the historically illuminating introduction to me, but it's so fabulous to be Francis to you for so long. Thanks Ina for the beautifully embodied reading. I'll embody in my kind of Mennonite minimalism way here. And it's just a delight to be here in this city where we feel the friction of mutual aid and humor, and just being able to hang out in a city that doesn't feel overly policed. So beautiful to be here. And I'm kind of gonna do like a snack, some different poems to kind of give you a sense of some of the work that I've done over the years. That poem that I was reading from, More Than Human Labor, kind of continues because there's lots of possibilities about what animals might do if they get treated like animals. I have this one serial poem that's been running over 4 or 5 books, and so I'll read an edited version of it from this book called The Vestiges, which is kind of an homage to George Oppen. This poem's called Oil for Food. I called you fellow investor just now for a reason. The idea of north just shifted north. Who took it? And how are you going to get it back? There was a redundancy of exploiters. I'm writing this letter to explain my failure to act like a human being. Water for power. It was much more my style to find sand in my eyes. Steel, unlike coffee and chocolate. A pension plan sinking like a ship's anchor offshored to Foxconn's supply chain. Expansive austerity. Toxic assets for a toxic personality, end of decade bonus. The shoes speak for themselves and need no further explanation. Stuck in the Rust Belt blues again. Architecture as a slap in the face of reinforced concrete. Now it is Yemen. Your building speaks Spanish. It learned it while it was being built. Trump quotation deleted here. Albania, 59.3%. Angola, 16.2%. Argentina, 43.6%. It's their country after all, even if we hollowed it out like a skull. To counter the land claim, they claimed Gulf as their cultural heritage. The first country I watched getting invaded on camera was Grenada. What was done to my country was very un-American and American. A fresh coat of paint can garner a return on investment up to 300%. If you think you know what debt is, you don't know what love is, mountain high. How deep is the city? It was completely renovated inside, and it was modern, which is something buyers are really looking for today. All yesterday's oligarchies are tin pot generals with psychopathic special forces and a driver. Today, dig the new breed. We can be owners, but not for just one day. I wanted to create a room where just sitting there feels like you're doing something. Hey, Mr. Pipeline, plug a leak for me in your environmentally friendly way. I was given the classic geographer's tour of the city. Bahrain, 54.3%, Bolivia, 34.6%, Bulgaria, 16.2%. Down south, the workers collectivize the factory. Up north, the middle classes unite. Events are always original, but they get reabsorbed. Is that Bill Gates on the world music guitar? Property is eternal, like every negation. Force, of course, or other economic means. fear sticks to those bodies, borders. Ask the architects what is minimal. The Spruce Street Tower may be a block of flats for the well-off, but it brings an energy to the skyline from which the whole of New York benefits. When classic rockification hits post-Fordism, you get a different Detroit. A table does not make itself, nor can it handle complex supply chains and marketing. Soon, we will be ship-breaking. That is the lyricism we are living. I enter an Iceland period. Unhappy workers. Canada 84.6%, Chile 11.9%, China 31.7%. Trickle-down architecture. Is it really necessary to say something about the individual here? Daniel Ortega and the return of Daniel Ortega. Yes, flesh over a titanium skeletal device, since you asked. Qual est tu, Huelga? Captain, dear Captain, were you asleep at the wheel or drunk at the rudder? This administration stands for more than finding another country to go to war against. Good morning, Syria. Mark Carney and the triumphalism of Mark Carney. Any space that is organized around the monument is colonized and oppressed. And who remembers Maurice Bishop? Slovakia, naturally, alone again. Zurich and Vancouver, reserves in the townships, pockets of poverty, haunted penthouses gaze at rusted hulks, and westward owners sob at the wonders of nature. From refugee to criminal in one step, the waterfront. The ranch has an organic, love the planet, old hippie vibe, at least once you get past the guardhouse. I have not reached the point in my life where I can, in terms of libidinal economy, enjoy Bananarama. It was a cruel, cruel summer in 1983 when the new reality of restraint was top of the biopolitical pops. Ecuador, 20.9%, Egypt, 88%, Estonia, 5.7%. The city center slowly moving east, as if nature wanted the working class off the waterfront. As the dead prey upon us, they still find time for rigorous workout regimes. Call me impaled, Ishmael. The Austrian television premiere of Adam Sandler's Little Nicky is a sad, sad cultural imperialism. But we were all above blame, south of liberalism, north of spatializing an idea. Things and the return of things. Beautiful, documented supply chain. My father's Timex. Pack your labor power in a sturdy waxed American cotton workers bag, $378. They burnt some flags, but for us burning flags is not a security issue, it's an environmental issue. At $2 a day, a European cow earns more than 1 billion people. Martha Stewart and the return of Martha Stewart. Nature leans in and wants its hammer back. Mexico has now made the world's richest man. Good practice. He currently works with PlaceSpeak, an online location-based community consultation platform. Finland, 53%, Germany, 81.9%, Greece, 156.9%. Total urbanization, said the World Health Organization. Deliriously flavorful mouthfuls of Thai-baked lentils with paneer, spinach, coconut, and polenta. Pleasure, it fails us now, but I see it's working pretty good for you. Stop the tyranny of serial pleasure. Banalization is not possible. Brazil wakes up to another modernism, this time on the streets. Checking this as if I have a set list. As Rodrigo mentioned, I took a very un-poet type job and was an administrator in a university for 6 years, also during the COVID period. And then when I came out of it, my imagination was completely stripped of me, so it took me several years to bring that back. And then I was able to try and write my way out of it. So I'm going to read this poem, which comes out of my experience of working at the university. So I'll dedicate it to all my fellow workers at universities, and also for people who've studied at universities and who might have hopefully a sense of this form of labor. The poem's called I Approve the Minutes. How do you work when the world does not? Or what you do makes the world worse? Or what you do makes you feel worse and spreads across the days as a catastrophe trophy and trumpet of sector experts hired to help with change management heartbreak? Hands up, all of those who thought a job was mutual. I thought so. Red thread woven through work. Forget it. I've internally betrayed myself. A class dream which was a daydream. To move from use to life and back again. My place of employment. My fall fashion. My esprit de corps announced. We stand for nothing. Stand with us. Side by side. Appropriately distanced and under contract in empty spaces of solidarity. It was not that I could not love or care, but that I had not been trained to evacuate that way, selectively, without setting a proper precedent. The recommended training module template was not filled with the joy I had expected. And the saddest cog was me. I was the chair of the committee. Not Comrade or Cecil or Sia or Enzo Mari's revolutionary Sedia Uno, just a living job description, a narrative of doing and knowing not in that order, scribed across a landscape of minds and visas that did not make time for daydreams from which the future springs. It was a silent spring, aside from wars, a semester after a plague, of new policies and policing. Through this, we lost track of who we were to be. 1,000 wolves, or the leader of the pack, Johnny? The bottom line, or maybe the high bar, hard to tell, outside of a pilot project, was do no harm. Do no harm was what to aim for, colleagues. But that proved hard to meet, so we reported back that no candidate was suitable. I had stepped up, but could not stoop. If I'm pledging my time to cohesion, then let time pledge that it can bond to other temporalities and pay the mortgage on the present for the education industry. Let it fling minds free, a centrifuge, and not come back hassling for tuition. My apology is twofold, sorrow and joy. It made me less human to have to unfold the categories of the human for others, to come into a software-compatible, rights-based form of recognition, like it was legit, rather than an unexploded shell from an earlier colony. This was the tentative space set aside to build new forms of human caring. It might be the Middle Ages of something, but it feels like the end point of time, negated, elated, and pleaded, while lessons on unlearning, double down on a double bind, the clear eyes and healthy hearts of the outsiders within, working on rough translations of the potential into the actual. I'm going to do two more, and I'm going to read from a series rather unimaginatively entitled Urban Trees, which is about urban trees. I started doing it because I live in Vancouver. The apartment we rent looks over a park, and the city is cutting down 160,000 trees out of this park, and also, doing other things. So I started to think through the relationship. What would urban trees do? Is sort of what I'm trying to. Address to the city. I see what you have done. Trees cut and chipped. The story of their health, merely maintenance and city safety, move from common to commodity. The city's idea of trees, manager of low-level species culling, susceptible species planning, species richness, speculated high-value species, street trees, wind-thrown detritus, disease, and risk. No cover for people pushed into the park. Ground rent abstracts ground, pulls trees into this clash, controlled green space, a cleanup against botanical justice. Can we call a city cruel, a revanchist urban jurisdiction, an act managing imagined nature, an uneven economy of green? Don't implicate trees in that. Trees and shelter. Out of necessity, a canopy, and birch, hazelnut, cedar, elder, a blind for stretched tarp, detritus tin and plastic sheets, precarious house hidden in trees. On a highway meridian strip, space spun past city periphery, farmland roads, suburban ovals, and a grid strata of how land is used in this logic. Past municipal cruelty, and between two lanes, a discrete space outside of property and into the trees as support cover before winter, bare trees, life. Future trees. Arizona cypress, hackberry, lampion, ginkgo biloba, Japanese raisin BB tree. Move as chosen future trees for an assisted migration south to north to cultivate future-proof livable cities where the trees suit future weather, the language of human migration converted onto seeds, trees, growth species, exotics, the fate of existing trees. Workers' cuffs. Seed pod pant cuff traveler. Workers of the earth carry future trees cuffed up in a rolled pant caught in a boot. Tread trees into the city. A continuous urban ground remake. Paths of work, walk, transport, shipping container, global cuff unfolded, brings trees along routes, paths, migration of labor bodies, seeds. The bombing soil, the soil of bombed cities, so altered, cannot grow so-called indigenous trees in dirt made by war, mingled with pulverized buildings, homes, a devastated dirt, calcium, lime, ash, carbon, bones, burnt and turned over, emerges first disaster flora as new urban cover, unpredictable saplings follow, burnt trunks, shrapnel bark, trees, less natural and stressed in wounded cities, the soil forming event of bombs and species choice. A tree knows the soil, but not that it's bombed. Bombing trees. Trees of Kiev, trees of Gaza City, trees of Beirut, trees of Borodankia, trees of Aden, trees of Kharkiv, trees of Marie, trees of Al-Hudada, trees of War of the Cities, trees of Derna, trees of Smara, trees of Aleppo, trees of Damascus, trees of Halabja, trees of Jibo, trees of Rafah, trees of Aita al-Shah, trees of Vovansh, trees of Abdivka, trees of West Bank, trees of Sana, trees of Morali, trees of neurology canopy. The aging city and synapses need over 20% tree canopy to drop the odds of dementia. Green alley, neurology of Linden. Better choose your neighborhood carefully. ungovernable trees. Where and how trees grow is structured through bodily sway, neglect, or care as other bodies, a shared social forest, deemed city or private property. A governed tree can surprise, rise, and spread against rule, break property cracks and roots, an ecology under an economy. An unruly process sprouts and counters. Urban trees do not comply easily, refuse to be governed like that, refuse the city order, refuse to be displaced. Trees grow unruly use instead. Trees and people, porous bodies, not commodities, even when they give shelter, give health, redefine water, hold soil, our homes. Trees work against being governed. Should trees have standing? Making persons of trees bends from rightless thing in nature to jural entity, but blocks another order not defined by that trick of singular recognition. Common law makes things rightless, and to gain rights joins the very category you are outside of. Enter an episteme built upon a solid outside. For humans who hold rights at a time, a space, and alters over time to take in trusts, corporations, inanimate rights holders, and exclude other humans. From thing to human and back again. Incorporated nature, property, trees, do you want to have such a standing or stand outside of such thought? Searching for the comrade tree. Why mother family form? Trees ursprung leave from their own rhizomatic matters, not familial. A division of labor, social, mutual aid, grounded in another. Something entirely else, not us. Our forms pressed whole on another after historic failure, crush, as one comrade to another nods, don't cut me down. I'm gonna end as my sheet of paper shows on a new poem. Written over the very compressed time that felt like this new invasion of Venezuela and the invasion of Minneapolis. It's inexplicably named after a Herbie Hancock song called Hang Up Your Hang-Ups. Are you hoping that banning anti-democratic parties is not anti-democratic? Or is that paradox an airy paradox? Phrases a question and circulate to the group. Magic words glisten on the horizon, hung up on slub, or hanging on the Blondie telephone is a new form of urgency before urgency was just exhausting. Like the German word for Hegel, like the English word for English, like the Esperanto word for biometrics. A children's rhyme, a quick iris scan quickens the self-checkout, brought order to the borders. Thank you for attending our evening seminar on fascism entitled Fascism, Understanding Fashion. Following on the heels of our weekend intensive, Pinochet, Seeking a Balance. By the thousands we gathered, reclaiming the streets for as long as our attention spans spanned, but eager to do it again. To hope is retinal, and the poetry of witness phone lines are flooded. I believed in those phone lines. They were my phone lines, my infrastructure of connection, a curriculum of the soul, a song sung on 6 strings of hope and a jagged bottle. Today, hope can be a local potato that grows to a success story. On this holy day, when Zeus, in the form of a meteorite, skidded to Earth in the dawn of extraction. If you cannot tell the similarity between expanding shelters for homeless seniors or the current complex refiguring of all logistics software, then you are simply not a savvy investor. and we know what happens to non-savvy investors. Your search for pleasure in my city is ruining it, said Barcelona, Lisbon, and other sister cities. Go co-work on a sugar beet farm in southern Alberta, and then we'll talk about health benefits. If hate speech and misinformation are your speech and your personal and corporate belief, is banning this speech anti-democratic or just bad poetry or good pottery on a scale of excellence publishable in a minor career? New opportunities for digital hate are savvy and compound. So in 20, 30, even 50 years later, thinking long term, immigration quotes balloon into remigration and outsourced rendition flights. A whole industry spawns from a little hate speech uttered in 1938, and you should have got in early. When you're clamping down the clamp, always watch for cracks. For cracks are where the lava leaks on this volcano we call home. A hot core capped with rock as a theory of social change. We chip, in unison, buoyed by chance and quality ingredients, until we hear, "I'll make love to you" by Boys to Men on the top of the charts. But there are no charts now, just a pie chart as a legal lesson on the windowsill of a summer's day, hazy with the rose-tinted safety goggles of declining wages, coupled with the ascent of workwear. Makes one wobbly for a time when a word was a word and free trade agreements were worth the wood they were whittled from. Mexico, we knew you well. America welcomed us with visas and opportunities to turn tundra into radiant. I was trained to be alive, to be a useful tool, to take pleasure where it took root on the Alaskan tour. Our bodies would break down, true, but the pleasure would be in the work, the very work of breaking down walls only to discover entropy. The discography of descent, which I stream silently in spring, turned to the trees, to whom I plead, "Please be with me, deep within me." And apologies for thinking you were just bark wrapped around the idea of a 2x4. Historical note: a 2x4 was a basic lumber unit, often used in housing construction. Common usage included "stupid as a 2x4" as a working class greeting at the end of the day. Our insults were our camaraderie, reserving the right, grasp it, to insult ourselves before others got to it. A preemptive pinch at the kitchen sink. Now I think my failures were surprisingly good, even though the future seems old wood. Thanks, everyone.
Keep it going for Jeff Derksen. Keep it going for Krasnoper. Undoubtedly, most of us here know that being social is work, it's labor. It's nice to know we have never had a millionaire in our midst here at Splice. We certainly have never had a billionaire. And so it starts with the readers, which we thank very much for their work. It also then begins with you who have been here, that always reaffirm our faith and solidarity. It's the same old outro, but the points remain just as important. Thank you for being here. The audience is important. The work of poetry is important. Tip your bartender, buy a book, talk about poetry. It's still here and it's still happening. Thank you.